Bonjour madame et monsieur, bonjour mes amis. Hello friends and welcome to the channel. The Frenchy bit there, that was because I'm going to be talking about the Canadian drone rules again. Now last time I did a video on this, I was working, as I said at the beginning of the video, I did qualify it. I'm working from the media reports and from the government's press release which gave an overview of the regulations. And the devil is in the detail with these things because the overviews, I don't know, they tend to gloss over some important things and they emphasize things that are relatively minor. And in fact, I found a few things out by going through the Gazzette, which is the actual printed version from the regulators, which I'll put a link to in the description of this video. Go down if you want to see the actual thing and read along with me because I'll be referring to it. Yeah, this is the actual words, the final words that say exactly what's going on. So it's not in someone's interpretation and it's not a brief overview that's been created by pen pushers. We'll look at the real facts, the actual regulations themselves. And the first thing I want to point out is that FPV is not illegal. FPV is allowed, but it's the same as in just about every other country where you must have a spotter if you are flying FPV with goggles or you're using an LCD screen. You can't just fly on your own. But I mean, this is one of those things that's so seldom enforced. I fly in the parks on my own, FPV with goggles, and it's against the regulations here, but I always do it safely. I make sure that I'm flying below the treetops, not going to hit a plane, and I make sure the area where I'm flying has no people around, and I regularly recheck to make sure there are no people around. So I have never caused a problem, never inconvenienced anyone, let alone hurt them. So no one has ever prosecuted me for that because it's a matter of safety, isn't it? It's common sense. The enforcement arm of the regulators are not going to waste their time and money prosecuting people for things that don't represent a danger. So if you don't hurt anyone, you don't threaten anyone, you don't break any property, I think you'll be pretty safe to FPV in the park with your goggles on without an observer. But ultimately, it's your responsibility. You have to make that decision. And if you do get it wrong, then you will get pretty hefty fine, I would think. And so, it's something you have to think about. However, there are other aspects of the rules I'll go over in a moment. But the one thing I have to say is, one part of the Canadian drone regulations that come into effect on the 1st of June are absolutely bloody fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. World leading, I think it is brilliant. What am I talking about? What makes these drone regulations so good? Well, it is the fact that they seemingly do not apply to craft that weigh less than 250 grams. That's right. In other countries like the USA, then the regulations still apply to smaller craft, but you don't have to register. You're not exempted from the regulations if you have a very small light craft. You just don't have to register. In Canada, it would appear, and I say it would appear because this may change, that under 250 grams, none of these regulations apply. In effect, the only things that matter if you're flying a craft that weighs less than 250 grams is that you do not endanger people or property. And that was, I remember I said that the drone rules, I did a video ages ago saying that we only need 3 drone rules. Or 2 drone rules. One is that you don't fly over 400 feet and 2 that you don't endanger personal property. Those were my drone rules. And now the Canadian government has adopted that for the sub 250, but they don't even have the 400-foot limit. If you're flying a sub 250 class, it seems that you can fly as high as you like. You can fly as far as you like without a spotter. You can, as long as you don't endanger people, it's a free rein. And is that a good thing? Well, I guess time will tell, but I think it's bloody brilliant. Because as Mr. Gagno's spokesman said, 300 grams, you can damage your aircraft cockpit. Under 300, no one gives a damn. And so under 250, free rein, fantastic. Now, I'm doing a video on my RC Model Reviews channel of my bonsai, my long-range bonsai, which the receiver, actually got the notification it's arrived, and it'll be on my desk on Monday. Woo! Anyway, that's the long-range receiver. So I've been flying with the regular 2.4. And that thing weighs in, the actual airframe and everything except the battery weighs in at 200 grams. And I haven't tried to make that light. That's just how it turned out to be. So I could easily shave off another 25 grams. So it's easy enough to build these days. An FPV fixed wing model under 250 grams that will have good range, a flight controller, return to home, all those things that you need to do, reliable long-range FPV. And you can do it legally in Canada. Brilliant. Anyway, that's enough of the good stuff because if you are flying craft that weigh over 250 grams, you're gonna have a few issues. So let's go through some of those now. As I say, I put a link to the Gazzette entry for these regulations in the description so you can read along with me if you want to, and I'm going to reference some of the part numbers. I'll take my glasses off because reading, I don't use my glasses. Okay, first of all, section 901.071. Here we go. And this is something that I want to note. Now, remember I said criminals will not register their drones. If someone wants to do something nefarious with a drone, they're not going to go and get a license, and they're not going to go and register it with the authorities, because that would be silly, wouldn't it? What they're going to do is steal a drone. If they want to do something nefarious, they'll come and steal your drone with your registration and so forth, like they do when they rob banks. Now, if a group of people want to rob a bank, they don't use their wife's car or their own car to go to the bank and run out and drive off it. No, they steal a car. So registration provides no value whatsoever. And that's what's going to happen with drones, of course. So they're going to steal your drone. So there are some things here in the for the register of remotely piloted aircraft that surprised me. Now, according to this, every registered owner of a remotely piloted aircraft shall, within 7 days after becoming aware that any of the following events has occurred, notify the minister in writing that A, the model aircraft is destroyed. So this is like every time you crash a model, you're going to have to notify the minister in writing. Really, this is quite a burden on people like myself that crash a lot of models. But, okay. B, that the aircraft is permanently withdrawn from use. Fair enough, I suppose. If you're never going to fly it again, you can deregister it. I don't know if you get a refund. I doubt that you get a refund of your $5. C, the aircraft is missing and the search for the aircraft is terminated. So you've lost it. It's flown away or it's crashed into some trees and you can't find it. Okay, fair enough. D, the aircraft has been missing for 60 days or more. Or E, the registered owner has transferred legal custody and control of the aircraft to another person. So it's a bit like guns. If you sell your drone, you've got to notify the registry that you no longer have that drone. Okay, but there's no mention of theft. And I would have thought that would be one of the most important things, because if someone's stealing your drone, they may have nefarious intent. And it would be good for the authorities to know that. But no, if someone steals your drone, you're not required to notify the minister that it's been stolen. Yet, if you lose it or you crash it or you just decide not to use it, then you've got to notify them. I think they've missed out that one. I think theft, because there is the registered owner has transferred legal custody and control of the aircraft. That's not a theft. You haven't transferred control and legal custody. Someone's stolen it. It was an illegal act. So that doesn't cover it. So I think they need to change that rule. Just a small one. But otherwise, this is what happens. Someone steals your drone. You don't tell the ministry. Your drone is then caught or crashes doing something illegal. Where are they going to go? They're going to come to you. But if you rock up to them and say, look, someone stole my drone, they'll go, no, it's not on the list. No, we're not going to make a note of that. Don't need that. If you crashed it or whatever, yeah, we'd make a note of it, but you're not on the list, sorry. And then someone uses it to drop drugs in a prison and you get in trouble. No, sorry, not good enough. They need to address that one on the rules. Now, here's a really good one. If you're flying, your drone cannot leave Canadian airspace. Canadian domestic airspace. It must stay within Canadian domestic airspace. And I assume that's only when it's flying. So if you were traveling down to the USA on holiday and you took your drone, that wouldn't be a breach of the laws. That's common sense. But here's something that's going to challenge the lawyers. If you're flying your drone on the Canadian-USA border and you cross the border with your drone, are they going to prosecute you for leaving Canadian domestic airspace? Well, I don't think they can, because the Canadian regulations only apply to Canadian airspace. They can't regulate US airspace. And the moment you leave Canadian airspace, you are then no longer subject to their rules. And as long as you're in Canadian airspace, you are subject to the rules, but you haven't committed an offence because you haven't left Canadian airspace. Bit of a catch-22 there. I think that would be a very interesting test trial if somebody did fly across the border. I don't think they could prosecute under this, because as soon as they became eligible for prosecution, the law could no longer be applied because they weren't in Canada. I think they've tripped themselves up on that one. Now, there's another one here called right of way. It says, a pilot of a remotely piloted aircraft shall give way to power-driven, heavier-than-air aircraft, airships, gliders, and balloons at all times. Which is kind of tricky, because if you're flying at the local flying field and some kid comes out with a balloon and it drifts into the flight area and a drone hits it, you've committed an offence. You haven't given way to the balloon. And what about when you want to have, like we have balloon bursting here quite often. I will tow a balloon up with one of my planes, release it, and then we all try and pop it with our models as it comes down. Can't do that in Canada. You've got to give way to the balloon. You can't drive a model into it. It's against the regulations. Part 901.17 if you're playing along at home. Okay, let's turn to 901.192. It says, no person shall act as a crew member of a remotely piloted aircraft system within 12 hours of consuming an alcoholic beverage, or while under the influence of alcohol, or while using any drug that impairs a person's faculties to the extent that aviation safety or the safety of any person is endangered or likely to be endangered. Now, Alan Yu brought this up. Alan Yu, very, very clever guy, spotted this straight away. 12 hours after consuming an alcoholic beverage. But hang on a minute. I can jump in my car in Canada, drive down to the local bar, have a beer and drive home. And as long as my blood alcohol level is below the legal limit, it's quite legal. So you can operate a ton of heavy machinery on a public road after drinking alcohol, but if you imbibe in any alcoholic beverage, you can't fly your drone for 12 hours. So you can jump in the car, drive down to the local bar, have a beer, drive back, but if you then get your drone out and fly it in the front yard, you're in breach of the rules. Seriously, I think that's a little bit over the top. And the trouble with rules that are over the top is no one's going to take any notice of them. Enforcement or compliance becomes very, very poor when people say, you mean I can drive my car, but I can't fly my toy drone? Seriously? And how do you explain that to them? How do you justify that regulation? They covered it all when they said you're not allowed to be under any drug that impairs your faculties, or you're under the influence of alcohol, because you can have a glass of beer and not be impaired to the extent that you pose a danger to anybody, because after all, you can drive your car home afterwards. Again, that's a really, really silly part of Canadian drone laws. And now I'm going to get into the parts where they're trying to treat drones and model aircraft as if they were full-size aircraft. They're trying to bring the same regulations and constraints in, and it's not really... Sure, if you're running a big commercial drone and it's 100 kilos and it has camera on it, it's flying over a built-up area, that's fine. But if you're doing the basic operations in a grassy field over the middle of nowhere with your friends, these should not apply. And let's have a look at the first one is 901.30. No pilot shall conduct the takeoff or launch of a remotely piloted aircraft to which the manufacturer has provided a remotely piloted aircraft system operating manual unless the manual is immediately available to crew members at their duty stations. Seriously. Come on. So you're flying your Phantom 4 over a grassy paddock in the middle of nowhere, and because you're flying FPV, looking at the screen, your smartphone screen, you must have a spotter to comply. So your spotter has to have access to a copy of the manual for the Phantom 4. Immediate access to that manual. What is the point of that? I don't understand the point of that. As I say, it's applying rules for much bigger systems to small systems. And it's anything above 250 grams. So that's, your Mavic Air, even stuff like that. Or if you've got yourself, I don't know, a park zone. You bought yourself a park zone, no, something else, an E-Flight Cub or something, or a park zone Trojan. Comes with a manual. If you're flying that Cub, you've got to have the manual with you, or got to have a copy on your phone because the regulations say you have to. And you have to have that manual available to the person who might be spotting for you if you're flying FPV. No, not good enough. So turn now the hymn book to 901.352. It says, no pilot shall operate a remotely piloted aircraft system with frost, ice or snow adhering to any part of the remotely piloted aircraft. And as I said in my last video, you do a touch and go in the snow, you're breaking the rules. You arrive at the field on a frosty winter morning, you get your plane out or your drone, you stick it on the ground, you have a cup of coffee with your mates, you go back, it's got frost on it. You can't fly it. Seriously. I mean, yes, I understand this with large, think about icing of wings, might be, if you're talking about, 300 kilogram unmanned aircraft, yeah, that's fine. But for these little ones, no. No, simply saying 250 grams to 20 kilos, no. It's way too wide, and it's, and also the type of operation should be a factor. Not good enough. Now, if you turn to 901.41 brackets 1, you'll see that you should never bother trying to promote the hobby by way of a public event, because it says, no pilot shall operate a remotely piloted aircraft system at any special aviation event or at any advertised event except in accordance with a Special Flight Operations Certificate, SFOC. And for the purposes of that, an advertised event means any outdoor event that is advertised to the general public, including a concert, festival, market, or sporting event. So if you want to promote the hobby, you advertise, come to our flying field this weekend and we'll show you models flying and get you... No, you can't do that. You can't do that because you're advertising that to the public. You have to get a Special Flight Operating Certificate to do that. Otherwise, you're in breach of the regulations. What a cumbersome complication that is, because clubs have been doing this for years. Regularly, we promote people coming to our field to have a look at the models and get new members and things. You can't do that. You can't advertise it. You cannot advertise it, or you will fall foul of that section of the new regulations. Not good enough. And here's one that I think is just absolutely ludicrous. I must have got this wrong. What I'm reading here cannot be right. Surely not. And I haven't seen anyone else pick up on it, so I don't know. Maybe this is only for the advanced operations. I don't know, but I couldn't find any reference to this being only for advanced operations. Then here it is. Let me read it to you. It's section 901.48 brackets 1. It says, every owner of a remotely piloted aircraft system shall keep the following records. Remember, this is anyone 250 grams to 20 kilograms. It's an AXN, it's a Bixler, it's a MAAC Air, it's whatever, right? A, you need to keep a record containing the names and pilots and other crew members who are involved in each flight, and in respect of the system, the time of each flight and or series of flights. And B, a record containing the particulars of any mandatory action and other maintenance action, modification or repair performed on the system, including 1. The names of the persons who performed them, 2. The dates they were undertaken, 3. In the case of a modification, the manufacturer, model, description and, of the part or equipment installed to modify the system, and 4. If applicable, any instructions provided to complete the work. You have to keep a log. You have to keep a flight log and a maintenance log for your AXN and your Bixler and your Phantom and your MAAC Air. It's the law. It's the regulations. As of June the 1st, looks like that's what you've got to do. Anyway, moving on. It says, in the case of the records referred to, the flight records, you've got to keep them for 12 months. And in the case of the maintenance records, you've got to keep them for 24 months. And at any time as requested, you must make them available to the minister. You must make these records available to the minister when requested. I don't think that sounds so good. I think that sounds ludicrous and it's lunacy. Now, perhaps it's not going to be a problem for model flyers because, finally, there is, hang on a moment, I'll just find it. Found it. In the description, this is quite a way, it's probably about halfway down the document that we're talking about. It says, while Part 9 of the regulations applies to all RPAS, all remotely piloted aircraft systems, members of the Model Aeronautics Association of Canada, the MAAC, operating at MAAC fields and MAAC sanctioned events will be issued an exemption to certain provisions of the regulations under the Act. Under the Act, the Minister has authority to issue exemptions to the regulations. The exemption will be issued to MAAC before the end of the coming into force of the regulations. Right. Now this is important. It says that the Minister has the authority to issue exemptions and that exemptions to certain provisions of the regulations will be given. But they don't say what provisions are. What regulations will MAAC members be exempted from? Will they still need to register? We don't know. Will they need to keep a logbook? I doubt it, but you don't know. This is pretty open-ended at the moment. And I think it's up to the MAAC to very, very strongly canvass for their members, to campaign to get the necessary exemptions. Not just, you may be able to fly over 400 feet. That's what's happened in the UK. The BMFA and FPV UK have got the right to fly above 400 feet, which is great because you can't really thermal soar with a big glider under 400 feet. So what will the MAAC get? We don't know, but I certainly hope it's exemption from some of these ludicrous aspects of the regulations that I've seen and I've presented to you here in this video. We don't know, it just requires to be seen. And the final thing that shows that I don't know that Transport Canada really understand what they're doing or what other countries have done. Let me just find it one moment, please jump cut. Right, if you go down to, oh no, it's about 3/4 of the way down the document, there's a heading called Regulatory Cooperation. And from that part of this document, it says, furthermore, both the FAA and Transport Canada have registration requirements for RPA at a cost of $5 US/Canadian. No, they're not the same. The FAA charge you $5 to register yourself as the pilot, and that's all you've got to pay. Transport Canada, a little bit greedier, they charge you for your test, and they're going to charge you $5 a model. So it's not the same. It's not the same. To say that the FAA and Transport Canada have registration requirements that are the same, no, rubbish. Did Transport Canada not realise that their registration system is totally different to the American one? Or do they? I don't know. Surely they do. I mean, they came up with this stuff and they must have researched it, but that's what they're telling us. Anyway, so there you go. That's my little follow-up on the drone regulations in Canada. And somebody put in the comments of my last video on this that there is a special exemption for people to get temporary licenses when they come to Canada with as a tourist. I could find no reference to that in the Gazette, and the Gazette is the actual regulation. It's not, if somebody had just said that, oh, we're going to do this, it doesn't happen until it's in the Gazette. So at the moment, there's still no provision that I can see for tourists to take their drones to Canada, because if you're not, remember, you're not over 14, if you're not a permanent resident or you're not a citizen of Canada, you can't get a drone license, and without a drone license, you cannot fly a drone in Canada as of June 1st unless you are supervised by someone who does have a drone license. So in the case of people visiting Canada with their drones, they're going to be a problem unless they produce another Gazette entry that clarifies this and says, but then what are you going to do? Are you going to say, well, visitors are exempt? Because all that means is that people, if they get pulled up, I'm just visiting. I'm just a visitor to your country. Anywho, mate, Canadian Royal Canadian Mounted Police, I'm just visiting, that's all they can do. I mean, you might want to move back to the USA and just visit, I don't know. But yeah, so that's another hole in these regulations at the moment. So there you go. Positive side of things. If you're flying under 250 grams, you can do whatever the hell you like as long as you don't hurt anyone or break their property. Brilliant, fantastic. The MAAC will get, well, they're saying they will give them exemptions to some part of the regulations, but it's not clear which parts. And yeah, that's it. That's what you've got. So tell me what you think. Comments down below. Have I messed up? Have I got something else wrong? Because I could do. I've spent probably a day browsing through this Gazette entry, trying to get these figures sorted out, and given you what I think I've found, but I may have got something wrong. Overall, I'd say for flyers of a small model, it's bloody brilliant. You'll be able to do whatever you like. The only country in the world, I think, where bevy loss is legal as of June 1st. Legal. Bevy loss. FPV, less than 250 grams. You can do it. Woohoo! So there'll be a lot of action on my RC Model Reviews channel coming up with sub 250 gram bevy loss FPV solutions that you can follow along and build if you want to. And if you're MAAC member, then there's a glimmer of hope. You may not have to keep a logbook, but even if you're an MAAC member and you go to the, you get exemption for having a registration as a member of MAAC, that's only at MAAC fields or sanctioned events. So if you're going to go down the park and fly your mini quad, or you're going to go and fly a Phantom somewhere, you will still have to register your craft, and you will still be subject to all the regulations outside of those fields. So there you go. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's a minor benefit if all you ever do is fly at an MAAC field. That's it. I've done enough. This video is too long already. Thank you for your patience watching this. And as I say, thank you to my Patreon supporters, because they're the guys that make it possible, okay? And something you're probably not aware, on my RC Model Reviews channel, I have this policy, you send me a t-shirt, I'll wear it. Well, I got sent this t-shirt. Here it is. If you'd know who sent it to me, if you can work out who sent it to me, put a comment. Tell the rest of the world. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.